Hey, Fatty coming back to the BK. Hey, Fatty coming back to the BK.
There's going to be problems for the Boston Celtics this year. I'm telling you. There's going to be problems for the Boston Celtics.
Kevin Durant really struggling against this Boston defense.
And the Boston Celtics complete the 4-game sweep of the Brooklyn Nets.
We know how to lock Patty ass up.
Hello and welcome to the Celtics Reddit podcast. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. I bet you're doing pretty well because, guys, it's a sweep. The Celtics defeat a two-headed foe in the Brooklyn Nets and NBA referee Scott Foster. Celtics Jay and Wayne Spooner are on the call. We'll get to your reactions in a second, but we've got a very special guest joining us as he busts out his broom from Celtics Corner, Jags, a.k.a. Jags to Riches. Jags, welcome, man. How you doing?
Oh, man, doing fantastic, gentlemen. As you stated, how could we not be? I am absolutely in disbelief. How about word of the day? Incredulous, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries, man. We're so happy to have you. Jay and Spoons, of course. Can we talk about the resolve of this team? Jason Tatum, he fouls out with about 3.5 minutes remaining. Celtics clinging to a lead. Jay, I can see you're bursting at the seams there. We'll start with you and then we'll go around the room. Talk us through this one. Like, what'd you see from the guys as they close this one out? Because it was definitely, like, in a word, resolve with this team.
Woo!
That's the other word.
Anything is possible! Man, I need a minute before I talk about anything rational. Before anything... Woo! My goodness.
Get in there.
My goodness.
Let's hear it.
This is just like, all right. Right, I can't think rationally in this moment, but what I can do is recognize what we've been like quietly acknowledging, but trying not to jinx it because we're all super either like kind of traumatized or really superstitious, whatever it may be. But like we are seeing some special stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not even trying to be over the like I'm hype, I'm amped up for sure, totally get it. But I'm not even trying to be over the top. There's something special happening with this group. There's something special about, listen, Ime Udoka, if nothing else, is really demonstrating a masterclass, like, screw coaching, just leadership. Like, we talk leadership, you can see it in the way that he interacts with these players throughout the game, and then you can see it in the way that they interact with each other during the game, because he sets that tone. And we're watching that in the body language, in the way that they're communicating on the floor, in the way that they're communicating with him, in the way they're not even playing games with the other team. It is hard not to just be completely, just turn into a giant goosebump over this stuff. Like, I am losing it. I've lost all composure. Spoons, bring some rationality to this, because I've lost my mind.
All right, I gotcha. So what I will say is, how many times did the Nets go on a run and get within 1, get within 3, tied the game a couple times? And it felt like every single time that happened, like 6 possessions later, it was back up to 10. And that's just, I texted one of my buddies and I'm like, is this what it feels like to be the better team? Like, right? This is what we used to feel last year. We're like, oh, we go on a run and get it within 3 against the Nets, and then you blanket, it's 15 points.
Yeah.
And every single time throughout this entire series, they just would put it together, put a run together when they needed it the most. And there was no bigger time than in the fourth quarter without Tatum to close this game. And they slayed the demons, man, the crunch time demons. Like, the best thing we could have done is win 4 close games and completely crush any concerns I had about closing in crunch time, which is the biggest concern I had. I don't know about you all.
Yeah, Jags, how are you feeling like going down the stretch in this game, especially once Tatum fouled out? Is the confidence wavering for you at that point, or how are you feeling going down the stretch of this game?
Yeah, I would lie. I'd be a liar, Ben, if I didn't have a little bit of anxiety in me when Tatum went down, especially, when we're involved with a gentleman by the name of Scott Foster. Lord have when you start seeing it happen, playing out in front of your eyes, it's like, oh my goodness, all the rumors are true. But that team, the resolve, I mean, I feel like the Boston Celtics, have just continued to answer question after question for me. Every time I continue to doubt, they continue to make me believe. And like you all, I mean, Wayne, you stated it perfectly. The big, kickback was they don't score when it matters. They're not clutch. They just beat the Brooklyn Nets with arguably the best player in the world, two of the top in the world. And every single game was by 7 points or less in a sweep. If that's not clutch, you tell me what is.
I mean, that's at the top of the page, right? In terms of what is clutch, it's these 4 games against the Brooklyn Nets. Like, tell me if I'm out of line here, bringing up the refereeing too early. Spoons. I felt like I'm never one to complain about the refs.
There's a reason he went to you first.
Yeah, I actually truly hate complaining about the refs, but when you have it's a joke amongst the NBA that if the NBA wants a certain result, they put Scott Foster on the game. Like, it's so widely known. People literally joke about it. And like Jags just said, that helplessness feeling when it's like, oh, but he fucking called that, didn't he? Yeah. It's just infuriating.
That boxing out foul? Come on.
What the fuck was that? What was? I don't know.
What about the Tatum one?
Tatum's 6th foul.
On Dragic?
The Tatum foul out.
Insane.
Yeah, the Tatum foul. He got fouled. Dragic's pulling him down. And it's yeah. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And it's just so infuriating because you can't do anything about it. Everybody knows it's bullshit. The Nets know it's bullshit. The Celtics know it's bullshit. Scott Foster knows it's bullshit, but you can't stop it, and it happens, but they won anyway. That's the craziest part.
Charles Barkley even said it was bullshit. Right at the end of the game, first thing Barkley goes on about, he goes, listen, guys, this is the worst ref game I've ever seen. I'm like, what?
Preach. That's great. Yeah,
Ben, I got to throw a question to you real quick, Ben. I got to throw a question to you because we've talked leading into this, and your biggest concern was completely valid, wondering about those clutch situations. And what were those final few minutes like for you? Because not only was it the most clutch scenario, but then they yanked Tatum out of that. Like where were you at in that moment, man?
It's hell. I can only equate it to surgery without anesthesia. It's just pure pain and suffering. But, we get through these things, right? And it makes us stronger. I might live 5 less years overall, but I'm happy right now. So YOLO, I guess. I don't know. What about you, Jags?
Right. I mean, look, I seen somebody tweet out that it took several years off their life. I mean, I would probably double that. This entire series, I mean, we go back to game 1. We made one more play than them via layup the last possession. I mean, this entire series has been absolutely stressful, and the stress continues because I don't know if you all seen, and I'm not trying to get too ahead here, Ben, but I seen something about Jalen and a possible tweet Tammy he was saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen anything about that, but have you heard about that and thoughts?
I did. Well, he had a response to Abby Chin in the post-game interview where he said, I think I'm okay. I'm going to go get checked out, but I feel okay. And that's all we know. But obviously the concern there is the history with the hamstring. And we've seen even just this year, the last couple of years, players with hamstring injuries get hamstrung, for lack of a better term. So hopefully that's not the case for Jalen Brown.
Well, and all the better to have this series wrapped up as quickly as we can and give them as much time as they can get. And then just kind of hope that, I mean, I don't know if anyone's seen sort of the update on the score for the other game there. No,
so
Philly and
Raps
are going right now.
Yeah, I guess the promising thing there is that for all of our potential future opponents, their own opponents in these current series are at least taking one game off of them. So I know you can get into the whole rest versus rust thing, but if there's a hamstring thing for Jalen Brown, there's clearly a rust thing for Rob Williams, and maybe we can get into that now. Maybe some additional rest helps there.
Before we move off the clutch discussion, I just want to say, do you know which team is number 1 in net rating in the clutch in these playoffs?
I can make a guess.
It's the Boston Celtics.
Jags got it.
When it counts. When it counts. That's right.
So we have a plus 60.2 net rating in the clutch. Philly is second at plus 28.5. So we are 3 times as good as the next, or twice as good as the next team in the clutch in these playoffs so far. So I just want to put the cherry on top of that discussion.
They're
but
just
I'm
sticking to
sorry.
that grind, man. They're just staying consistent from end to end on it. And like, I got nervous just to put the final button from my perspective on the reffing thing too. I know we're kind of going a little all over the place. We can rein it in a bit, but like, did anyone else have that terrible feeling at the beginning of the game when they started calling all those fouls that kind of went our way? Like, oh, here we go. All right, so here they are making their case. Like, when they look at the numbers at the end of this, they'll be like, oh, equal calls. And it's like, no. You can't front end this shit and then go pull that junk and call fouls for someone boxing out. Listen, I understand sometimes the way these guys battle in the paint, right? That one, it sticks with me because it triggers me as someone that played ball and made their living boxing out. That's all my wide body self could do. And it's like, you're taught to do that a very particular way. And Horford, it was textbook. There's no rational reason for that to be called. If you're going to call anything, it's over the back. What is over the back? If not exactly one, right? What was happening there? So like, it was just, it seemed far too, like Spoons was saying, it's almost just a joke now that they were just front loading all these calls for Boston to be like, hurry, and at the end try to play whatever songs and whistles they can to, make Kyrie and KD look like, heroes. Didn't work out though.
Instead of bums.
That's all right.
Yeah.
He's like, nah, we're good.
So I don't really have a run sheet for this podcast. I sat with my notes app open and just with my hands were shaking and I didn't achieve anything. But I think we should do an around the room on critical junctures within this game. And I think the best one to start with, Jags, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, is Jason Tatum gets his fifth foul, I want to say, with 8 minutes to go, 8 minutes and 14 seconds. And Ime pulls him. And in our Slack, as this was going on, there was some back and forth as to whether or not that was the right call for Ime Udoka. Do you agree with Ime pulling Jason Tatum out at that juncture within the game?
Oh my goodness, Ben. I don't know. This is a tough one, right? I feel like in the moment, it makes sense to immediately pull him out just to, but then as I continue to sit here and think about it, for some reason, I'm kind of going against that. I guess you pull him out just in order to save face, but I mean, that strategy blew up and they immediately go back on a run and get back in within it. It's every time he goes to the bench, the game would start to creep back into the Nets' favor. So I don't know. It's a great question. What was y'all's thoughts? I'm curious.
I don't think there's any right answer. I think Scott Foster was going to get him his sixth foul no matter what within a couple more minutes of gameplay. So I see the logic in taking him out and inserting him back in when you need him in those last 4 or 5 minutes. Absolutely. And I can totally see the argument for leaving him in. I probably would have yanked him and did what Udoka did just because I'm very conservative with stuff like that. And, as the clock ticks down, the minutes just get more high leverage. So if you can guarantee he's in there from 5 minutes to 2:48, which is what he ended up playing after that fifth foul, at least you get him then instead of him picking it up with 7.5 minutes left or something like that.
Jay, what do you think?
And I think there's a dynamic to that too, where you take him out because by taking him out, or rather play it the other way. You don't take him out. The very next play, Durant's going to go right back at him. And they'll just run screens until they get Tatum back on him because they're just going to work that, right? And so you take him out if for no other reason, in my opinion, than to keep the Nets from being able to come right back down, get him his next like in sequence and have that be part of their momentum and their confidence building, right? Because then it's like now they're just enforcing their will on us. And it seemed to me like he just doesn't play that shit. Like
no,
he just doesn't play that. He will not let you like punk him. It won't happen. And so he says, nope, if Tatum's going out, he's going out on our terms. You know what I mean? And if we can get one more big bucket out of him before he ends up out, we'll put him in a situation like, and it's just crummy that then like the first time he goes to attack, they call some junk. But I think it speaks to what would have happened otherwise. And I think had he fouled out playing defense with KD attacking after that last play, I think that really could have turned that momentum in a dangerous direction. And so I think if for no other reason, just to kind of curb that momentum piece, I supported that decision.
Yeah, I think I agree. Jags, are there any other sort of critical junctures, especially in the fourth quarter in this game, that sort of stood out to you as like a turning point or a moment where, it was clear to you that the Celtics had won the game or anything like that?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm one of those people that until the clock strikes 00, I'm never kind of out of it. And I'll say when Al Horford hit that, yeah, right. Yeah. When Al Horford hit that putback layup, that Marcus Smart hit, that was incredible. You want to talk about critical moments? How about giving up a 15-point lead in the third quarter? Or, having a 15-point lead in the third quarter, going into the fourth with a 12-point lead and slowly letting that, slip away. But yeah, like I said, I really was not comfortable. This was one of those games where with 9-point lead, they'd bring it back to a 2 to 3 point lead. Then we go on a little bit of a run. Tatum fouling out, Al Horford getting that ice, probably two of the big pivotal moments for me in the fourth.
I got a quick question. And Spoons, maybe you caught this. I didn't quite follow. At some point in the third quarter, Pritchard's in the game, and I think we had just come back from a timeout, and the very first thing that happens is Pritchard goes and fouls Claxton to get him on the line. Can you give me the context for that? Because I want to explore that a bit, but I kind of need to understand what was happening there.
It's just hack a Claxton, get him to the line because he was
why in that moment? Any thought on why?
They were in the bonus, and I think if it's within the final 2 minutes of the quarter, you can't. I can't remember what the rule is, but yeah.
So if they had done it any later, they would have given free throws, and they would have still had the ball. Then it kept possession.
I honestly can't remember the rule right now, but I believe that's what it is.
Something along those lines. Because that was a moment for me that stood out, because that's when it seemed like it was like the first time I saw Udoka do something that didn't lead to us going on a run. It kind of ended up being the other way around. And we ended up closing out the quarter okay. But it did seem to just give some kind of juice because Claxton got one of them to go down. So he started feeling away. And granted, I think it's the only one he hit. So, kudos out of 11. So
crowd went wild.
There did seem to be a little bit of a turn of the tide there. I started getting nervous. I'm like, whoa, is he trying to overthink this thing now? Is he overcoaching? But listen, I'm not going to get in any state of mind where I'm going to start questioning this dude, because he has done nothing throughout this entire year other than prove he knows what the hell he's doing, and everyone just needs to get out of his way. You know how they usually say, give your superstar the ball, get out of the way? Give Ime Udoka superstars and get out of his way. Is basically that's the hashtag for this right now.
Give him the
it's
clipboard.
great. It's nice to see a coach get some shine like that. That I don't think it's been such a superstar driven league for a while now. And we've had some coaches come up, and Steve Kerr's gotten a lot of shine in Golden State. I know Spoelstra gets a lot of shine in Miami. And Brad did too, to a certain extent, but there's something about this guy's swag that he is going to be. He's a guy that's going to be the guy for a while. I'm calling it now. Ime is going to be around for as long as he wants, and he's going to be winning some basketball games.
Yeah, and his ATO playbook is just as, if not more impressive than Brad Stevens. You can imagine there's probably some peer reviewing, peer sharing going on there. But
I'm sure they've had some working lunches.
I'm sure, but for Udoka to take it and run with it, that's Brad Stevens we're talking about. To say that you could just carry on from where he left off is pretty huge, but he's totally doing that.
When a candidate like Ime is looking for a job opportunity, right, and looking for what makes the most sense for him and doing what it is that he wants to be able to do, how many open positions are there in the league where you can take such a stable roster that's been so well coached? Usually a new coach is going into a space where the previous coach just the floor bottomed out, the car's broken down and you have to come in and you got to hot wire that thing back together. He got to come in and things were okay. Media and everyone's talking all this junk, things aren't great or whatever, but there really wasn't any conflict to have to deal with. It was a bunch of young guys that did need to take that next step maturity wise, but man, in amazing circumstances for an organization and a franchise that for the last couple of decades has not always felt like it's gotten the benefit of good circumstances.
Yeah. Do you remember the first pod you and I did, Jay? Your first pod with Celtics Corner podcast. We talked about Ime Udoka. Maybe he's not the right guy. He doesn't have much of a personality.
And I own that. I was way off base.
We were wrong. I was in the Darvingham corner. Mostly just because he has a cool name. But I I was wrong
and we
as well.
haven't heard from Sam Cassell like all season. Like he disappeared.
I want to just get to some news out of the Brooklyn Nets front office. Ben Simmons is expected to be available for Game 5 on Wednesday, according to the Brooklyn Nets. So that's great. We can look forward to that. Before we move on to, obviously we've got another round of playoff basketball that we need to start considering. Before that, I'm interested to hear, Spoons in particular, any other junctures within this game that sort of stood out to you as turning points?
Right off the rip in the first quarter, Tatum racked up a foul for basically moving his feet on defense, and he immediately put Jalen Brown on Kevin Durant. It's almost like he coached around the reffing. Mm-hmm. He's like, all right, I know where this is going to go. Go get him, JB. And you saw Grant Williams on Durant for large swaths of this game, which he did a fantastic job.
We've got to talk about Grant.
But yeah, and he did such a wonderful job in every way guarding Durant, but it's just one of those things where he just knew Tatum's going to get a bunch of fouls. I can't have him guard Durant, even though that's a huge disadvantage because Tatum has been amazing on Durant. I've never seen anyone guard him like Tatum has. So I thought that was a really savvy move early in the game to just make sure you get as many minutes out of Jason Tatum as you possibly can. And I thought there was a play, I think it was a 3-point game with 35 seconds left. And Smart almost picked Durant's pocket in the backcourt, and that ticked the time down below 24 seconds, so he could just take the foul and give them 2 shots and never let them get a 3 off. So that won the game in my opinion. And it was all because he made Durant waste, 7-8 seconds just dribbling the ball into the front court. Mm-hmm. It's who does that shit? Marcus Smart. That's who.
That's a player of the year.
I thought those were 2 kind of bookends of just
those are great catches.
We're just a better team because we do this stuff on the margins that matters so damn much. But, if you take one event, it doesn't really mean that much. But when you're doing it every time and the other team is not, then it adds up to a sweep, even though they have KD and Kyrie.
Yeah, absolutely. And Marcus Smart is the biggest no-yes player maybe in Celtics history, and that foul was a no yes before, because you had to look at the clock as the foul was committed and be oh, okay, no, that's actually a good foul, as opposed to what are you doing, which is where my mind sort of drifted in the moment. A couple of other standout plays. So fourth quarter started with Tatum on the bench. Nets went on a little run. Tatum comes back in, gets a dunk immediately, I think, in transition off a Nets turnover, and then gets just an ISO 3 on the next offensive possession. Sort of immediately re-establishes himself in the game as the alpha, which is still crazy to say with Durant and Kyrie present in this series, that Tatum is consistently doing that. And he did that, in multiple occasions tonight. And then, of course, he picked up his foul with 8:17 remaining and went to the bench. The other big Tatum moment or juncture was at the end of the second quarter. Tatum is posting up on Patty Mills. I think it might have been Jalen or Marcus who got the sort of nifty entry pass into Tatum. And Tatum is just so patient, and the clock is ticking down to 0, and he waits for that help just to drift a little bit away from Grant Williams, kicks the pass to Grant Williams, who knocks down the 3, almost a buzzer beater to end the second quarter there. And we end up, going into halftime up 8 instead of 5 or something like that after a little bit of a late Brooklyn rally there. So Tatum just he's 24. He's just picking these guys apart. There's actually a Reddit comment on that from Chinese Fox 97 who said Tatum and Brown get their 3rd sweep in the first round. They are 25 and 24 years old, respectively, which is absolutely insane. We'll go around the room one more time as
right,
Jags
Jag.
pats the Tatum jersey in the background. Nice. We'll go around the room one more time. Jags, we'll start with you. Mostly because I just want to hang on this moment for as long as possible. From the game or from the series overall, is there anything else in particular that's sort of noteworthy or stand out for you?
I think we started to get on him, but we didn't give him enough flowers. Grant Williams, let's talk about him for a second.
Huge.
The fact that throughout the entirety of the series, he's averaging over, 50% from 3. He's averaging double digits, and that's just on the offensive end. What this gentleman has done, and just the system and the schematics behind the defense, when it's not even what they're doing on the ball. It's when KD was off ball, just watching with Grant and Al shading to, I mean, just making this man's life hell. It was just, the defense was baffling. It was stifling. It was incredible. I mean, Peyton Pritchard, I mean, when you talk about some of his flash and some of his moments, I mean, I mean, we could do this all night, man. We never have to move on. I have brooms galore all around me. I'm ready to talk about this as long as you want, buddy. Let's go.
It's 1 p.m. here, so I've got all day. I'm good.
I mean, I think that's a great point, and probably was like one of the big question marks for the Celtics was like, how are these role players going to step up? And they were awesome. Grant was incredible. PP, he did exactly what you want out of that spot, which is like, go win us 4 minutes, you know, just like shoot red hot for 4 minutes, then we'll take you out. That's all we need from you. And it was just really impressive. Like all the role guys, except maybe kind of Derek White, who was fine. He didn't kill us or anything, but he wasn't like a huge plus. But I mean, they were all great. Like they won us games, and that's what you need on your way to a championship.
Especially game three. Game three by itself, you could say it was the other guys that won that, all their performances. But Derek White, I mean, come on. That's everyone likes to say that's my Doppler. I haven't seen him either recently, guys. I mean, we need a little bit more from him making $16 million.
We finally get a Celtics player on the podcast.
I know, right?
Doesn't like the winning layup, the pirouette layup in game one, isn't that sort of magnified now that it's a sweep, that happened, that we won that game in that fashion? Now more than any time, except for maybe right then when it actually happened, it's like now more incredible than ever because, you know, you look at the series completely differently. If the Nets go up 1-0 in that situation with Kyrie sort of backbreaking the Celtics crowd in Boston at that time, instead, you know, we steal that game. I've said on the Celtics Corner stream, I said it on one of our podcasts subsequently, that was as close to a draw as possible with the Celtics still winning the game. The fact that we pull that one out, we win the next 3 in a row. Going back to the word we used at the top of the podcast, it's all about resolve. And based on how the season started and how these guys are playing now, it's absolutely incredible. And you've got to feel good going into this upcoming round, you know, presumably against the Bucks, and then hopefully progressing further into the postseason. My wife dangled the carrot the other day that if the Celtics make the finals, I can leave my wife and my 2-year-old daughter behind and go to Boston and watch a couple of games. Assuming I can get tickets, which I probably can't. So I'm very, very, very interested and invested in how the rest of this postseason goes for the Celtics. Before we move on, a couple more Reddit comments here. So from LW2K, Celtics without JB, the 2021 Celtics without JB and Kemba lose 4-1 to the Nets. The 2022 Nets with KD and Kyrie get swept. Just an amazing turn of events, only 1 year away from, you know, that unfortunate postseason. I want to sort of end the game or the series discussion on this post from user Vanique, who said, explain to me how the Nets were so bad in this series. And they go on to write, regardless of how well we've played, how does a team with 2 of the best players in the NBA, a Curry and a bench filled with veteran all-star pedigree, Griffin, Dragic, Aldridge, etc., get swept in the first round of the playoffs? Is it culture? Is it bad coaching? Is it individual personalities? Jay, let's get you started off on this one. You know, I guess you were probably the least worried going into the series of all of us sort of in the Celtics fan community. So as I think about it out loud, maybe you're the worst person to ask this first, but I'm curious to get your take on it.
Listen,
please.
More often than not, that's always going to be true.
I disagree.
That I'll be the worst person to ask just about anything. But for me, because so much of what I sort of understand and perceive when I watch the game, separate from a lot of folks who I think see the analytical, the logistics of the game a lot better and more naturally than I do. You know, for me, everything comes down to a lot of the psychology around it. Like, that's what's fascinating to me. Like the storylines that fuel each of these players, each of these men that play this game and seek to compete at the highest possible level. And so when I see a team that's led by 2 people that have spent their entire careers avoiding that level of responsibility and personal accountability, it's hard for me to fear that. And last season, I know that, we got our bell rung by these guys, but, for all the joking that some folks have done on social media about, like, this is the same team that LeBron housed a few years ago. It's like, no, it's not. This is LeBron does not want this version of Tatum. He absolutely. LeBron got dunked on by this rookie version of Tatum and left the conference. All right. Like at the end of that game, he had a little, like, hugging conversation with Tatum. He was like, dude, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I'm not dealing with your ass for the next handful of years. Listen, you get to the finals and maybe I'll try to meet you there and we'll deal with it then. But I don't want none of this. Meanwhile, Kyrie, he tried to be Superman or Batman or what the hell ever he was trying to be when he got out from underneath LeBron's shadow. And we saw firsthand what he does with that level of responsibility on his shoulders, and that he will skirt it and then like buckshot it out at everybody else. He's not a guy that brings people together. And I don't know that it's even his intention to not do that, but I just think it's just part of how he relates to the world and the people around him. He's just not one of those folks that seems to bring people together. He seems to expose those cracks more than anything. Again, I don't think it's intentional. I just think it's part of like what he is or who he is. KD, you're just never gonna get the flowers that you want when you go and join the team that just put you out, right? And that team already had the winningest season ever. You're just not gonna get flowers for winning with that squad going and running over there. And then you want to come over to New Jersey and try to be that guy now? Their best shot to get that was last season. And so when they fell apart last season, bring him back. Bring him on back. I'm happy with it. And so it was all pretty, from my perspective, it felt predictable. I mean, listen, you still can't like just disrespect those guys because they can still ball as good as anybody in the damn league. Getting swept doesn't take away the fact that those two guys are legitimate basketball players that play at the highest possible in level. But two great players are not going to beat a great team. It's just not going to happen. And basketball has demonstrated that throughout all of the decades.
They won no games. Like, yeah, they came close to winning one, but that's just, I just can't believe it. So if, looking at this Reddit post, if I'm a new NBA fan, even myself to some degree, I still can't believe it. Jags, like, what's your take? Like, how were the Nets so bad in this series?
Yeah, I'm with you, man. It was a little You remember when we had you on it, we had already won a game and we were still hesitant to say Celtics in 5. Like, we still kind of... It's two of the top and arguably coming into the season, the best in the world in KD. I would say, top 2 with Giannis. But I mean, for me, this Brooklyn team, it was a soap opera this entire year. It kind of reminded me of our last year with Kyrie. It's just, I mean, he played, 29 games. He was a part-time player. Then it's James Harden. I mean, I bet they would like to have him in this series. Then you get rid of him, and then it's like you get Ben Simmons and all these new pieces. And then KD misses the entire month of February, half of January. But then still, these guys were hot coming in. Like, let's not forget, KD was averaging 32, 8, and 8, shooting 42% coming into this over the last 20 games he played. Yeah. Kyrie, 36 and 6, shooting over 40%. But again, Jay said it perfectly. Two amazing guys cannot beat an incredible team. And that's what we took those two gentlemen out to the point where Bruce Brown was their leading field goal attempt in one of these games. I mean, that is how we beat this team. The Boston Celtics, like I said, they've continued to answer every question I've had, and I'm to the point where I'm not doubting them at all moving forward. I'm not giving anyone else respect. It's about this team.
For sure. Sounds like I'm heading to Boston pretty soon. Spoons, anything to add to that?
Definitely.
I was very nervous going in, but once we won game 1, once I got to see it play out, I was supremely confident. I thought it was going to be a 7-game series. Then once I saw that game, I was like, oh, Celtics in 5. And it's mainly because the Celtics do not have any weak points on defense. And the Nets, what they try to do, they do not run an offense. They go matchup hunting. And if you go matchup hunting against this Celtics team, you're not going to get a good shot. So you're asking a team to basically take some of the worst, lowest percentage of shots in basketball, basically all contested mid-range. That was like 50% of their shot mix in this series.
Yep.
That's an insane number. It's the worst shot in basketball, and we're trying to like you're gonna win a 7-game series doing that against the best defense in basketball.
That's how you get swept.
Maybe that's how your ass gets swept. And like, do we have a high-powered, incredible offense? I mean, we can. We didn't even shoot the ball well this entire series. Did we crack 40% from three in a single game?
Nope.
I don't.
Oh, we
did tonight.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we did tonight.
It's quick to dismiss that.
Right at 40%. Right at 40%.
Okay.
Wow.
So we had one game where we were like hot from three, and that's not even like hot. You know what I mean? It's not like we were 50% from three, which we're capable of doing. So I didn't even think we played that well offensively, and we still swept their ass because you just cannot attack the Celtics in that way. It's not going to work, and that's why they're built for playoff basketball, because lots of times that's what playoff basketball devolves into. You know, on the other side, take your pick, Jalen. Goran Dragic, go at him. Patty Mills, Blake Griffin's corpse, whatever you want, man. Jalen had an all-you-can-eat buffet because, like, Tatum's got Durant on him, who's their 1+ wing defender, and Jalen's like, all right, man, and he crushed him every fourth quarter. He was he scored, like, all of our points. He was, like, I think he was, at one point, the leading fourth quarter scorer in the playoffs. I mean, we're just a much, much better team, and that's why their asses got swept, even though they have KD and Kyrie.
Yeah, and it looks like,
back to Jay's point,
it looks like KD agreed with that. Just scrolling through Twitter again, like KD's post-game comments was basically like they were just clearly the better team, which is like not a hot take. You just got swept in the playoffs, mate. So
yeah, no, they're way better than us, guys.
Team. Before we get to the Bucks, which we can safely, I think, talk about now, there's a quick note here from ESPN Stats and Info. The Celtics swept the Nets with a margin of victory of plus 4.5. That's the third smallest margin of victory in a 4-game sweep in NBA history, just behind the Cavaliers' 2017 first round plus 4.0 and the Warriors' 1975 finals of plus 4.0. So, Jay, going back to your initial point, like, I'm going to excuse myself for my sort of frequent heart attacks throughout this series because it was close. It was a sweep, but it was like literally one of the closest sweeps of all time.
No, and they put you through it, man. They put you through it. Yeah.
Fuck that stat, though. Last game, I think
That's
it was
our
game
stats
3.
Guy.
it was garbage time.
Yeah.
That game was over. We were up 15 with like 45 seconds left, and they hit 3 bullshit threes. Yeah. Like, okay, so now it's. I mean, yeah, it was a close series. Was it like a historically close series? Absolutely not. I mean, they're just like, okay, Seth Curry cut our deficit by 9 points in garbage time.
2 seconds left.
Yeah, like, who gives a shit? That's not a thing. Did you ever, like, we were in control of that entire game. Clearly the better team. Felt the same way about this game until Tatum fouled out as well. Like, we were just obviously better than this team. So fuck that stat.
I agree. Fuck that stat. In hindsight, at the time, that stat was fucking me big time in my mind hole.
I hear ya.
So just quickly, we will move on to the Bucks in a second. Of course, we'll be back in a couple of days and we'll do like a pod sort of more holistically on the series once our emotions have settled a little bit and once, you know, the dust has settled. Any other notes you had that you brought to this pod that you haven't had a chance to fire off yet? Like, for example, I have that Bruce Brown was not a factor defensively on Tatum, particularly in the third quarter, especially when Tatum dream shook him and scored on his ass so easily. And like everyone on Twitter was like I don't know how to say it properly, like, but Jakeem Tatum Olajuwon or like whatever, however you can sneak Tatum's name into Hakeem Olajuwon. Everyone was doing it at the time. What else do you guys have?
Just going through, like, I really enjoyed looking at this box score because one of the things that it really, I think, brings to light is, again, speaks to just the performance of the players. But again, I also think it speaks to just Ime's game planning for this whole series because we've seen really intentional decisions that have been made in the way that we cover, you know, Kyrie and especially KD, you know, putting all those bodies. Jags brought up, you know, really the hallmark of this series has just been the bodies that KD has had to run through just to get the damn ball. You know, KD had a great night tonight from the way it looks, right? Like, he got 39 points, he got 9 assists, he got 7 rebounds, got a steal, 10 for 11 free throws, but 3 for 11 from 3, right? 13 for 31 from the field. This guy, I mean, so 27% from three, getting plenty of looks. And for as many points as he was putting in, like, he still was not an efficient KD. He was like, he had to earn every single bucket. And that's been like my whole hashtag this whole series is just wear their ass out. And have them gas by the time you get to those crunch time moments because, right, we just trust our whole team more than they can trust anyone but those two guys. Bruce Brown, 2 points tonight, right? Kyrie, only 13 shots for Kyrie. So listen, Kyrie, you don't, I'm going to go and I'm going to be a little bit of just like, hyperbole fan here, but you don't get to call yourself a fucking superstar and take 13 shots.
Yes.
In an elimination game, you're getting punked by your former team and you're going to go back to Boston, shots.
You didn't want to go back to Boston.
13 shots. Holy crap. You got to be kidding me. He ended up with 20 points. And he was shooting pretty well. He was 2 for 3 from the 3-point line. Listen, that's just coward shit. That's a dude that don't want to go to Boston. That's what that is.
Yeah.
Like, listen, I don't like Kyrie. I don't want them to win. But Kyrie's better than that. And all that does is remind me of his bullshit against Milwaukee, his last season with us. That's all. Only this time he just didn't even want to shoot it. He's like, nah, because last time then they just called me a bad shooter or said I couldn't, so I'm not going to do that. I'll have a good percentage. I'm just going to take a bunch of shots. I'll force feed KD, let him try to, let him be daddy for a while. And I'm just going to hang back and wish that it was LeBron. Like, just bullshit, man. Like, go out there blazing, little fancy layup at the end, like trying to make it look good. And ESPN or rather TNT is on their fucking shit talking, oh, what an amazing take to the basket. Yeah, one of his 13. One of his 13.
Tatum had 5 fouls at that time.
Holy cow.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yep.
Marcus Smart took more shots than this man. Marcus Smart matched him for points. Marcus Smart, he went above him for assists.
Ball.
Future All-Star Marcus Smart.
Marcus Smart punked KD. Or not Kyrie. Punked Kyrie.
That too,
the better point guard in this game was Marcus Smart. And it's not even debatable.
The series.
Kyrie,
series,
you got a contract coming up, homie. You're trying to get paid again, right? You ain't getting superstar bucks with 13 shots. I'm sorry. So what I got from this is Ime said, we're simply going to force these superstars in this game at this point to beat us. Your superstars are going to have to beat us because we're not going to let Bruce Brown beat us. We're not going to let Claxton beat us, right? Listen, you want Claxton in the game? Sure. Only play Drummond 4 minutes. We're just going to put him on the free throw line and you're going to have to live with that. So then they got to bring in Blake and the corpse of Blake. But the corpse of Blake was the only plus player on their freaking team tonight.
He looked
that
great,
dude's a
didn't
plus
he?
10. Everyone else is negatives all down the board. So his corpse is the only one being a positive factor out there tonight.
Says
and he
a
didn't
lot.
score any points, for Christ's sakes.
Still cannibalized overall in the last 2 games.
All right, so there.
Corpse.
I got it all out of my system. I had to get that out. Thank you. Ugh.
Jags, Spoons, any sort of final takes in the chamber, as it were, before we move on?
I'll say real quick, Spoon, not to mention off of what Jay was saying about Kyrie, let's not forget about his performance tonight was also coming off of the heels of a 10-point and a 16-point performance. He's disappeared in the middle of this playoff. I'll argue that Smart was the better point guard throughout the entirety of this series, and hey. Agreed. So Kyrie, he's what? He's looking for an extension this off season. He can extend?
Yep.
Oh, man.
I think he has a player option.
He might be gone. Like,
He might be.
For real. If I'm Brooklyn, he's out. 29 games this year, and then he played like he did in the playoffs. My only other point, I'd like to also shout out Jalen Brown, Mr. Consistency throughout the entirety of the series. If you really look at his stats. And
good call out.
It was 22 points, 23 points, 22, 23. And then with exception to tonight's game, I know coming into tonight's game, it was field goal attempts, makes, rebounds, assists. Everything was within 1 to 2 points, 1 to 2 of the total of each other, as in 5, 6 assists each night, 9 on field goals. It was insane how consistent he was, in addition to how dominant in the fourth quarter. Shout out to Jalen.
Just one quick takeaway. Jason Tatum's 5th in the playoffs in assists per game. He's averaging 7.3 assists a game.
Wow.
I mean, we wanted that level
Top
up,
3.
man. That's where it needed
In
to
the
happen,
world?
right?
In the league? Top 3?
Yeah, and he ain't 3.
Bro, they're
but
saying he's better than KD now. I mean, what are we
He
saying?
just sat KD's ass down.
Grant Williams is
yeah,
better
he
than
just-
KD.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Ben, yes.
See, now we can talk our shit, right? Or at least
That's right.
I
Yeah,
can.
right.
Like, it's over. It's over. We
What
can
can
say
you
whatever
say?
we want. Yeah,
Nothing.
They
of
want
course.
they asked for it. They asked for this.
Get it out. Get the dustpan.
Came
So
prepared
good.
here,
We
boys.
want Boston.
Yeah.
You
So
got Boston.
They had the nerve.
very quickly
I
before
know,
we wrap
dude.
up, let's talk about the Bucks, and we will come back and talk about this later in the week, unless the Bulls, come back and run a few games out over the Bucks.
That ain't
Can they
happening.
trade for Rondo real quick? Can Rondo do that magic thing he does?
So I guess the starting, but there's two things. So Chris Middleton, very likely, very possibly out for at least game 1,
Yeah,
possibly
that
game
sucks.
2. And I guess going into the playoffs, my approach was, and Jay and Spoons, you know this, I was so terrified of the Nets that I guess in the back of my mind, my mindset was, if we can get through the first round, it's an honorable sort of bailout of the postseason to then lose to the Bucks. Now that we've really just shat all over the Nets as we have, I guess my expectations have changed, and I expect it to be a really competitive series. And if I want to go there, that maybe the Celtics are, kind of slotted to win that series. Spoons, do you feel the same way? Do you have high expectations going into this one?
I think it'll be a really tough series. I actually like how we match up with Milwaukee quite a bit, and this is not the same Milwaukee team that won the championship, man. Like, Connaughton's not playing as well. He's coming off injury. They miss PJ Tucker a lot. They really don't have anyone to guard Tatum unless they want to have Drew do it, and then who the hell's going to guard Jalen Brown, So I like how we match up against Milwaukee. They can't play Brook against us because they have to play drop. So Tatum just waltzes in to pull up threes. So does Jalen. So I can't believe I'm about to say this. I expect we win this.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we should win. I do.
Jags, do you agree?
I'll be honest. I think, Ben, you pretty much hit it right on the head on how I would have stated. Coming into this playoffs, I respected Brooklyn too much. I basically said if we got to the second round, it would be admirable. We'd give Milwaukee, a good strong 6 games before they would advance.
Yeah.
That is not the case anymore. Like I said, I'm not doubting this team no more. And this is very raw. Let's be clear. I have to sit down, look at some notes and deep dive. But right now, no, I think that not only does Boston win, I don't think it's as tough as we might initially be saying. Because, I mean, there's no Middleton. I'm thinking my initial reaction is Boston beats the Bucks in 5 or 6. I think you'll be in Boston.
Middleton,
Ben.
is he ruled out for the whole series?
I don't think for the whole
it's
series.
not confirmed
yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope he's, because here's the thing, listen, it'll be what it is. Obviously, I know none of us are, I know for a fact none of us are those the types of folks out there wishing injuries on nobody, and ultimately I always want us to beat a team fully loaded, just like I'd want our team fully loaded to go into a series. We've had so many tough, just combative series with Milwaukee. They're probably a closer rival than any other team over the last handful of years. It's Milwaukee and Philly. Those are the 2 teams that we've really had the most conflict with over the last 5-6 seasons. And so, my hope is always bring your full squad. Let us bring our full squad, because it's time to settle some debts. And especially Middleton, because he's the freaking Celtic killer. That dude turns into Jalen Brown when he plays us. It's ridiculous. And so, I'm hoping that he's able to come back and be competitive. I'm hoping that that's not the thing that gets in Milwaukee's way of playing at their best. But even if he's not available, I've got a lot more respect for Giannis than I've got either one of the guys in for the New Jersey Nets. So I'm not sleeping on dude. And I mean, he's going to probably be the one guarding Tatum, and he's probably going to give Tatum some fits because, like, KD has good length, but KD's not strong like that. And KD doesn't take the same kind of pride on that side of the ball as Giannis does. Giannis, he's pissed that he's not the defensive player of the year. He doesn't understand that. And so he's going to come into the series and be like, watch something. He'll put that stink face on, and he's going to smash a couple of dudes' heads just getting buckets, and then like smash some heads blocking some buckets. That dude he's a menace. He's a force to be reckoned with. He scares me. He literally does, because he's a guy that I think there's just something about the way that man plays basketball, and that he's allowed to play basketball, that is like Shaq-like in the way that he can just physically impose his will on a game. Now, I'm still feeling pretty confident because ultimately, again, I've been just blown away by Ime's ability to scheme. And it's clear that dude has been doing work all season planning for this. Like, he's known he's going to the playoffs this year. He's known that he's not satisfied with first, second round. Like, that dude's coming from a pedigree where it's like, no. Y'all, where do you all want to go? You want to go here? All right, let me show you the way. And so I have every confidence he's going to come in and like Spoons had said, probably look to exploit Lopez early. Because if you don't take Lopez off the floor, he's a problem. Because he's got length and he's got strength that will be hard for Rob to body.
He can shoot too.
Yeah, and he can shoot. So yeah, he's not going to be going around Horford or Williams, but what he will do is he will be out on that corner when Giannis crashes to that basket. All of our team collapses in on the paint, and there's Brook. So if you're not exposing him on the other side of the court and playing him off, that's a big problem. He can be a difference maker if we don't get him off the floor. So I think they're better coached. I think they're better coached. Nash, maybe Nash will figure it out down the road, but he clearly hasn't figured it out yet.
I think Nash's days might be done in Brooklyn. Someone's got to be the fall guy. It's not going to be KD. It's not going to be Kyrie. Given the relationship between Kyrie and KD, like if Kyrie wants to re-sign in Brooklyn, I think that's a foregone conclusion. But for this upcoming series against presumably the Bucks and the Celtics, I think from like an objective fan standpoint, watching what is clearly the best defense in the league currently and one of the best defenses all time go up against literally like a Greek god in his prime, just from an objective standpoint is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to suffer through it. I'm sure you guys will as well, but I would love to be an objective fan and just watch that from a basketball standpoint. And remains to be seen what happens with Chris Middleton, coming back with his injury there. Look, guys, we're over time. That is going to do it for this one. We will be back a little later in the week to debrief on this series at length and talk a little bit more about the Milwaukee Bucks. Huge thanks to Jags for coming on. Jags, tell the people where they can find you.
Hey, man, no, thank you all so much. I appreciate your time. It was an honor and a privilege, guys. You can find me on Celtics Corner, and also I'm most likely going to be in the comments section of this and multiple videos here on the Celtics Reddit podcast.
Hell
nice.
yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on, man.
You guys are rocking a really awesome pregame show, man. Like, if you got to choose between like the TNT, the ESPN bullshit, like, give Celtics Corner a look, man. You guys are doing some cool stuff over there. I dig it.
Wayne, Spoonie, Celtics J, you guys are dead set legends, as we say here in Australia. Thanks as always. Let's do it again in a couple of days. All right, folks, go and celebrate. Until next time, go Celtics. Peace.